I think we're live. How's everyone doing? Get going on this Tour de France. Let me work one more thing in here. All right, stage 6. The Mur de Bretagne birthed the victory for the skinny Irishman who has made a living on these types of finishes. The climb was scaled twice in the last 20 kilometers, giving everyone a chance to bring their nerves to a peak. While the climb would take its toll on several of the GC hopefuls, mechanicals seemed to doom a few more than the climb itself. Tom Dumoulin, Romain Bardet, and Jakob Fuglsang all had to chase in the last 10 kilometers, with Fuglsang making it back in time and staying with the leaders to the finish. Bardet made it back, but faltered in the last 1 kilometer, while Tom finally had the bad luck that's eluded him so far this tour, losing almost 45 seconds. In the end, it was Dan Martin doing his thing, attacking 1 kilometer and holding off the field to the line, causing havoc behind as TJ came dislodged along with Froome and Iran, losing 6, 8, and 11 seconds respectively. The GC continues to shake up, with each contender having their issues for this tour. The reality is the GC is tightly grouped for those still thinking of yellow in Paris, and we are seeing an equal footing going into Sunday's battle with the cobbles and then the Alps still after. Coming up, stage 6, July 12, 2018, Tour de France. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is the Between Two Wheels podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Janke. We're doing stage 6 recap. Stage 6, Brest to Mur de Bretagne, Guerladan, 181 kilometers. The race starts in Brest in the northwest portion of France and moves to the east, south, to Brest before attacking the Mur de Bretagne twice. They had a sprint at 135-kilometer point, 2 categorized climbs on both sides of it, 4 categorized climbs on the day, 3 Cat 3s, 1 Cat 4, bonus at 168-kilometer point. And unlike I did not mention yesterday, Zimny loves Brest. That's good to hear, Brian. Unlike yesterday, I did not mention that they attacked the Mur de Bretagne twice. So they get to go up that twice. Brest, western point of France in the Fenestre department of Brittany. And since 1901, Brest has served as the midpoint of the 1,200 kilometer, 750-mile bike endurance event, Paris-Brest, Paris. Last edition was in 2015. For all those out there going to do the death ride this weekend, maybe you should take on that. Well, I don't know if the Paris-Brest, Paris is back in, but that's maybe one of those endurance rides you can do as well. The Mur de Bretagne Guerladan, that's a town that's now formed into 2 from the Bretagne and the Guerladan. It's got this giant man-made lake that they kept showing on TV today. The lake was created from 1923 to 1930 following the construction of a 40-meter dam in the Blavet to power a power plant. Until then, the Mur de Bretagne decorated, it was basically a wall. They call it the wall. I guess that's what the Mur de Bretagne means, hence its name. All right, highlights. I didn't get to see who abandoned today. Trying to do this quickly and see where the data comes out before we're able to really assess all of it. But jerseys going in today have Tom Squeens of Trek still in the climber's jersey, sprinter's jersey, Peter Sagan of Bora, the best young rider in white, Soren Kragh Andersen, GC yellow, Greg Van Avermaet of EMC Racing. Let's talk about the notable Americans coming into today. We had Ian Boswell, 1854 back, Chad Haga at 6 minutes back. I think he may have lost a little bit more time today due to having to help out with his teammate. Lawson Craddock, 43.12. He's 170th place, last overall. Taylor Phinney at 22.03, and TJ Van Garderen kind of hoping the best, waving the flag for the U.S. up there on 3rd on GC. We get to see him a little bit in today's finale and makes a little bit different move on the GC overall, but nothing. Look, we're not expecting TJ really to be the man of the tour anyway. The break for the day, we had Damon Gaudon of Direct Energy. He's of the Trobro Lyon fame. You may remember him. We talked about him. Curt's really in love with him from the Trobro Lyon race where he came across the finish line, I want to say 2 years ago, posting up kind of a spastic post up. This year, he coming in, he still had a chance to win that. And I think he ended up 2nd place. So we didn't get to see that a second post up where he's a little bit like an epileptic. His teammate Fabien Guerlaire of Direct Energy was in the break as well. Anthony Turgis of Cofidis, Dion Smith of Wanted Group Gobert, trying desperately to get back the polka dot jersey, and Laurent Pinchon of Fortunato Samsic. We had 4 guys were all on continental teams. The 3 teams represented: Direct Energy, Wanty Group, Gorbert, and Fortunato Samsic. And then Cofidis, I don't know if they're Continental or World Tour now, but they haven't had a win for over 10 years in the Tour de France. And I'm not sure why they still get in. I think it's their sponsorship. They're able to put in a bunch of money, and so that helps them, and they're French. So they make this, they get into these big races. But they're a pretty terrible team, actually, if you look at it from the perspective of what do we get on results. Okay, so early windy section caused a split in the field today. Primož Roglic mixed out on it. So his team had to come to the front doing a bunch of work. And the effort paid off because he ended up in the top 10 at the finish of the day. So Lotto NL Jumbo went to work, got those back together. But in the split itself, you saw Quick Step kind of powering away the group. There was an interesting little dynamic at one point where I think it was Stefan Klung of the BMC team. He was kind of rolling up the front. It looked like it was either him or TJ. And the Quick Step guys are on the front. And at one point, he doesn't want to pull through anymore, Klung. So he kind of pulls off, and you had some words. He's like, you guys pull. And they're like, you pull. And Quick Step ended up taking the lead. But it was this little interesting dynamic. Quick Step the other day had some issues with the fact that other teams were not doing their work. Well, your guys winning all the sprints, so you're kind of the team that's tasked to do this. That's what it is. I mean, BMC is actually putting in a lot of work the last few days just for Van Avermaet, which is a little bit suspicious. I mean, do they want to drain their team out before they have a chance for the final, with Richie? But then again, it's also, I think it's helping Richie stay up front and probably out of trouble by them doing a lot of work as if they are the team leader, which they are. Okay, so a little breakdown. The break, basically, they're coming up last 25K into the Mur de Bretagne, and they're going to circle that twice, and it's about a 10K, I think, circuit or so once they get back to it, once they get over the top. So coming into that, the group, the break was still off a little bit. Dion Smith of New Zealand, the Wanty Group, Gorbert, he had a point or two coming into today for the polka dot jersey, which he had worn early. So he was looking to get that back, and he had been amassing points on the early climb. So coming in, he just needed, I think, at least 2 points to get over the top of the Mur de Bretagne to the first time through to get enough points to have the jersey for the next few days. As they came up to that wall, he was the other guy in the breakaway, Grillier from Direct Energy, was off the front a little bit, and Dion was trying to get there, but he got swallowed up about 1.5K in. The first time up, the field did not the pace was a little more up on the front than the early parts. Didn't do anything. They came over the top. Squeens ends up taking the points for the Clammers jersey, so he'll get that for the next few days. Probably into the Alps, actually. So I think he has enough points until they start Tuesday, where they go to Le Grand Bernard for stage 10. However, then right over the top, you had Jack Bauer taking off. And then the next few kilometers get interesting because they're preparing to come back around to the finish to take the climb again. So all these riders know kind of what they have going on and what the positioning needs to be coming into that. And first you have Jacob Fuglsang gets a flat. His whole team drops back, and they're looking pretty calm. They're bringing him back up. They're weaving through the cars. They're about 8 or 9 kilometers to the finish, but the climb starts at 2.2, so they need to get back up there, obviously. And they're tailing onto cars. They're on their team car. There's a little suspect, but they make it back to the group. No penalty that I've heard of for Fuglsang and his team. And then about 5.6K, Tom Dumoulin has a mechanical. He says he basically, and I'll get to that quote here in a little bit, but basically he ran into someone else's wheel, and so he had to change it. He and his team kind of start to amass, and they're having to move because they only have 3K. And at this point, on the front you have Dimension Data and Bora both driving the front, so it's causing a lot of trouble for him to get back. He's really got to hump it to get there, and it's a little bit of a downhill. And he's once again getting onto team cars and such. 3.5K, Roman Bardet has an issue. He goes back out of the peloton, gets a quick wheel change. He comes right back. I don't know if that energy expedition that he had to expend was enough for him to cause him trouble on the day, but he did have some trouble on today. 3 kilometers, Sky starts coming to the front. Tom Dumoulin is about 36 seconds back. He's still not making it. The road is wide open. You have Dimension Data and Sky now on the front. They hit the climb with kilometers. Tom Dumoulin still 31 seconds back. Now you have dimension data, Bora and Sky all in that order. The yellow jersey, Van Avermaet's in good position. 1.5, Daniel Oss and Julian Alaphilippe kind of hit the front. I think there's a little bit of a headwind, so they're a little tentative to kind of take it from that far out. However, about 1.2, Richie Porte and Geraint Thomas come to the front, and they're not attacking. They're just kind of riding hard. And then suddenly, right at the 1K, you have Dan Martin attacking out of the field. And he does what Dan Martin does. He hits the gas hard, and he holds it off. And he has several sections where he's sitting down and then standing up and sprinting. And what basically comes after him is Porte and Yates both trying to close the gap, but they're not doing so. They're not able to do so. Bardet comes unhinged at the 1 kilometer point. About 800 meters, Porte's driving it. Martin's still out in front. 500 meters. Now you got Laporte chasing his teammates off the back, but Pierre Laporte's chasing on the front, trying to get Dan Martin. Martin keeps sprinting out of the saddle, sitting back down. It's not closing it. The gap continues to come down. Now you start to see gaps forming. Actually, it was in that same 1 kilometer point. There's about 7 or 8 right in the front. And you had Nibali starting to come off of Greg Van Avermaet. He's trying to close that gap. It's looking a little tough for him. And further behind, you have Froome, Uran, TJ. As they come up about the 250 meter point, Dan Martin's still powering away at the front. Valverde, and then you have Pierre Latour trying to close that down. And now Valverde starts to sprint out of the group with Geraint Thomas and Porte on the front. What you then have, though, is TJ Van Garderen that is coming off the group just a little bit. But right behind him, he has Rigoberto Uran, who's starting to form a gap, and behind him is Froome. So now Froome's getting distance. As they come across the finish, Dan Martin takes the win. Pierre Laporte bangs on his handlebars, missing out. And you have Valverde coming across third, then with a group of about 14, 13 coming across, with TJ just barely off the back of that, getting a 6-second gap to Dan Martin. And then behind him is Froome, another 2 seconds back. And then behind him is Uran. So you had Froome missing out in the day, having a little trouble. But we've seen this throughout with Froome on these punchy climbs, not being, and it's not TJ's bag either, having a little trouble. Uran, I actually would have expected him to be okay on the day like this. Bardet, I would have expected him to be okay in a day like this, but it didn't work out. So Dan Martin wins, Lapierre second. Then there's other groups. Tom Dumoulin is a big loser on the day with that late mechanical, which he's avoided problems all tour. Bardet, like I said, he had a bad day as well. Comes out that Tom Dumoulin also gets a 20-second penalty for not having, or for basically dragging along on his team car. So you got the results here. Dan Martin, Latour, Valverde, and let me just go the top GC guys in the last. Well, Alaphilippe was 4th and Micah 5th. Now let's go to the GC guys that are in that top. Yates, Mollema, Geraint Thomas, Primoz Roglic, Porte, Quintana. Van Avermaet was in that front group as well. Nibali, Fuglsang, Landa, they all came in the front. And then right behind them was TJ getting the 6 seconds. Chris Froome at 8, Rigoberto Uran at 11, Barguil at 12, Ilnur Zakarin at 12, Kruijswijk, Brunel at 12, Bardet down to 31, Martin Guillaume at 31 as well. And then I think 50 or 43 or so was Tom Dumoulin, but then he got an additional 20-second penalty. So he's back even further. So here's your GC. Greg Van Avermaet, Geraint Thomas, 3 seconds, TJ now at 5. And then you've got, I'm going to do all these, and I think Rigoberto Uran is still your virtual best placed GC hopeful. So he's at 7th place at 45 seconds, Valverde at 51, Fuglsang 53, Porte at 53, Landa 55, Yates 102, Dumoulin 103. Well, he's actually 123 now. Froome at 102, Nibali 108, Kruijswijk 126, Mollema 118. So your real GC is back to, take 45 seconds off of all of those. And that's kind of where you're at. So from the 45 to 120 area, those are your top. Well, Dan Martin's 127, Bardet 145, Quintana 210. All right, so that's kind of where we're at. So like I said, the virtual GC is kind of the 45-second spot. So take those numbers back, subtract it off of the 45 seconds, and that gives you kind of what the GC picture looks like. So and as an example, Bardet is 1 minute off of Uran. That can make a big difference. Jerseys after today, Tom Squeen still on the polka dot jersey, Sagan in the green jersey, Soren Krag Andersen in white, and Greg Van Avermaet still in yellow. All right, we do have a little feed here. Let's see what Brian Zimney's thought. I thought it was reported Bardet swapped bikes with a teammate. So initially his teammate was being indicated much further off the back on TV because they were reading his bike transponder or bike number. Could be, Brian. I'm not sure. All I know is watching it on TV, Bardet definitely came off the group himself at the 1 kilometer spot, and he definitely got gapped off. And his teammate, Pierre Laporte, didn't seem to give a shit about it and was continuing to try to take the win at the front, which he did not. Maybe you can give me some little clarification if I answered that one or not. Okay, some things that make you go, I got some feedback last night from my friend, teammate Jason Smith, saying that well, it's probably all three of us, me, Curt, and Chris, which we should be all together again tomorrow, that we're Sagan haters. So no, we're not. Well, at least I'm not. But what we do have, I have a problem with, and I know Chris tends to harp on this too, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about it tomorrow, is the NBC feed and kind of their over the top Sagan loving. And I mentioned the Jens Voigt issue. That's always bothered me in the past. Jens, fine rider and everything, but I remember the one day where he's going down in the Alps, or maybe it was the Pyrenees, and he falls like on 3 successive corners. And the comment there is about how amazing and tough he is. Well, I mean, come on, dude, you're falling in these corners. You don't glorify everything that happens, and that's kind of the way that they seem to be on those issues, which is sometimes a little frustrating. I personally I get bought the NBC Gold package, so I have options of watching the no ads feed. It's advertising free, and it's Robbie McEwen, Australian former green jersey winner, sprinter extraordinaire, and Matt Keenan, announcer, and they're phenomenal. I actually feel like you have two versions. And look, I grew up on Phil and Paul and love them. And, their time was very cool, but I feel like they're great for the masses that are just getting introduced to cycling. So, but at some point you're getting a little bit beyond the fact that you keep talking about, drafting and these things and the tactics. I want a little bit better analysis. And I get that. It's like beginners and more advanced. And the Australian guys are definitely giving me the more advanced talking about it. So, that's kind of the thing there. It's not so much against Sagan, who, look, today he's up in the top 10 there again. So kudos to him. All right. Tom Dumoulin issues. So his teammates sat up for him and waited for him. And it was pretty impressive to see the white jersey wearer, Soren Krag Andersen, wait for Tom as well, especially when he's still got that competition. And I'm sure that's not his ultimate goal, but he's doing well. And he did help Tom quite a bit. However, that 20-second gap, I don't know if the car actually made that much difference. And it's kind of sucks that he got penalized the 20 seconds when you can see the same thing happening for the Fuglsang group of, 3, 4, 5 kilometers prior to that. But this is the things that happen. Tom has been able to avoid all problems this tour. He's been the one that Void today, he would have probably been up there in the finish without a problem. He would be, 10, 11 seconds off the lead still. And that would definitely give him an advantage. Now he's back, with all the rest in time. Actually, he's kind of in the middle to behind some of those. It was a little interesting thing I saw right when they were catching Jack Bauer, 4 kilometers to go. There's a little kicker. I saw a Katusha rider pull off to the side of the road and just get off his bike. Now I'm sure he was having a mechanical, but the way it happened, it was right on the front. They came around a corner. If anybody has any info on that, I would, maybe like to know. I'm sure he was just helping a teammate. Maybe he was helping Zakarin. I don't know. Maybe that was Zakarin having some trouble, because I saw he lost a little bit of time today. Dan Martin mentioned today in the interview that his wife was just going into labor. So maybe this victory is kind of a reward and justification for missing out on the birth of his child. So congratulations to him. Trouble up the Mur. So there were gaps today formed. Nibali had trouble holding on 700 meters to GVA's wheel. Looked a little suspect there. So, but he finished in that front group still. Also Iran and TJ in the last 500, along with Froome. We've talked about that before, about Froome having trouble on some of these short kickers. I think it was last year, the stage Barguil won. I'm trying to remember which which stage that was, but there was a kicker up to the finish. It was a mountain day, and so they'd had a lot of time out, and Froome loses like 20 seconds at that point. And I remember the commentators then saying, is this the end of Froome? Let's not talk it to death, Curt says. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but please be a little bit more explicit. All right, let's talk about Froome losing time. No, we're not going to talk anymore about that. Let's talk some quotes at the end of the day. It's Dan Martin, stage 6. It's a great feeling to actually get a win. I have had so many second places at the tour since the last one. I was a bit nervous because of the headwind. I didn't think it was going to happen. The race went so hard on the first part of the climb. I saw everyone was on the limit and there was no teammates left. So why not have a try? Well, good point. And obviously it came out to win for him. He does stick his neck out there and gives himself a shot at taking these wins. So, he does get the win, but he also gets a bunch of seconds as well. Pierre Latour, AG2R, second place on this stage. I thought this was somewhat interesting. We said that we were in a good place on today's stage. We would try and win the stage. Perhaps with Alexis Villemous, who had won there previously in 2015, that it was if Romain Bardet didn't have any problems at the beginning of the climb, there weren't any problems. So I pushed hard. When I was fighting with Richie Porte, the wind gusted in from the right, and it meant I just had to miss that point of attack, which wasn't great. I don't know what he's talking about there, but I guess the wind caused him to miss that. Now he's talking about Bardet's problems. I didn't actually know about that. Nobody told me. I didn't think there was anything I could have done. We'll try to fight to get it back. So look, the team had plans to go for the win. And so that's kind of what their deal was down at the bottom. But it seems like to me that, Bardet did have problems on the climb, and he would have been better served to have been helping him out instead of trying to take the win himself. All right, Geraint Thomas, second overall on GC. Quote from him: "If Tom Dubin had lost time, then that's good for us. A bit of bad luck." All right, it seems a little bit unsporting, but that's Sky for you. We didn't go that hard up the Mur de Bretagne the first time, but in general, the day was hard. It was hot and always fighting for position at 2,000 meters of elevation. Yesterday was hard as well, so it's taken its toll. All right, nothing really there from you. Thanks, Geraint. Tom Dumoulin, it was bad luck. I got a wheel from Simon as soon as possible, and we tried to go as quickly as possible to the finish after that. I knew I wouldn't make it back, so it was about limiting the time loss. There was a movement in the peloton, and I couldn't avoid it. I hit the wheel in front and needed to change wheel and chase to the finish as hard as possible, but it was very difficult. We knew that the first 5 days were very lucky, and we also knew that bad luck could hit us too, and it did today. It's very unfortunate, but it did. It's how it is. I'm disappointed, of course. I would have liked to be in better position on GC, but that's how it is. He didn't mention anything about his team car, but glad that they helped in the polling. Chad Haga came back and helped them too. It looked like it's too bad. There's so many other riders getting or not getting time penalties and doing very exact same things at different times. And I guess Fuglsang got it forgiven because his wasn't at as such a desperate time as Dumoulin's was. All right, so what do we have coming up for tomorrow? Stage 7, Fourgua to Chartres, 231 kilometers. This should be a sprint day. You have one Cat 4 climb about halfway through at 120 kilometers. You have a sprint at 168 kilometers and the bonus time at 200. It should be a sprinter's day, so it will be interesting. Geraint Thomas has taken a few bonus times, so it'll be interesting to see if he still continues to try to do that. I imagine it's not going to happen. GVA can beat him out in those. If it comes down to a sprint, probably not going to let him just take it anymore. This should come down to a sprinter. So assume a shot for Gaviria, Sagan, and the other remaining sprinters. I'd like to see Groenewegen finally get a chance to and start near the front for once. Interesting comments real quickly about Ilnur Zakarin the other day and Katusha. I heard Ian Boswell talking about it, how his team, I guess it was really, he said he saw Ilnur go down. Ilnur is a guy that he goes is so nice that he doesn't even ask for help. Sometimes, he takes a pee off the side of the road and he's not even asking for teammates. And Boswell's like, hey, look, man, you could be a little more forceful about this. So anyway, he has a problem in the last few kilometers, and Boswell's radioing, and he says guys are just selectively determining not to go and help and actually do anything. And then I guess there's a lot in them, because Kittle's basically telling others, no, you don't understand. You're working for me because I'm going to win this sprint today, or at least be a part of it. And he didn't win, so I guess it was a little heated at the dinner table. But we'll have another shot of this on the Friday. And then Saturday, it's a little bit more lumpy, probably a sprinter's day as well. So still Gaviria and Sagan doing their thing. And then Sunday, you have the Paris-Roubaix in July. Should be a killer. And then Monday, a rest day. And then Tuesday, start featuring the Cat 1s and HC category climbs up to the La Grande Barnard. All right, Curt Mills has chimed in here. Tom's most valuable teammate was Minnie Cooper, not to be confused with Winnie Cooper. Really? You pulled Winnie Cooper. I think in real life, she is a math genius. I think that's my understanding, that she's a doctor of math and has written some math books. So don't be messing with Winnie. Yes, Curt confirmed that. Thank you. The Wonder Years. So there you go. All right. Speaking of the Wonder Years, those riders are all in their prime peak, ready for this race, and we should still have some exciting racing left. Thanks for joining in today, episode 78 of the Between Two Wheels podcast. As always, subscribe, share the show via iTunes, Stitcher, Podbeam, or whatever podcast service you use. That reminds me, we were talking to Matt Chat last night, who's been on this show, and he said, hey, is there a way I can get this podcast? Other than, he almost seemed amused or confused that there was even a podcast, which he's been a guest on. So yes, try one of these. You can have all kinds. You don't have to use Podbeam. That's just one aspect. We kind of share the show out with that one because it's the easiest one. It's the Podbeam is the service we use. So I would suggest you if you have an iPhone, you can have their Podbeam, their podcast thing right there. Search for Between Two Wheels podcast. I would suggest Stitcher's a great one. One of my favorites, Overcast. We're on iTunes. Like I said, we're on TuneIn. There's a bunch of different ones. So check us out. Find us wherever you're at. Subscribe to it. It'll get downloaded immediately, and you don't have to worry about it. Interact with us on our Facebook page by searching Between Two Wheels and the links. We'll also be in the show notes found in the description of the feed. One last thing, Podbeam, always easy download for offline listening, says Brian Simney. Some others do not. All right. Well, that's really good to hear. So any more feedback? In the next few days, we'll try, when we're doing these, I'll try to schedule when we're going to do it. Maybe we'll do tomorrow. Try to do live feed as well. I think we're going to try to schedule a recording with Chris and Curt around 11:30. Maybe we'll live feed that as well, so we get comments coming in. We're going to do some local racing. We had Davis Crit. We have World Tour going on. We have the Giro Rosa. So stay tuned. Thanks.